Hi, well, welcome to this week's video, and once again I'm going to say thank you to Lindsey for allowing me to be with you this week, and it's been a pretty interesting week. Well, we're just a week removed from Trump becoming the president-elect of the United States of America. Now, Lindsey's done a great job in doing a special report and keeping you updated, and basically I wonder what's going to happen now. I think we all wonder that. He being Trump has been pretty clear that what he wants to do is what he says is drain the swamp. What's that look like? When he drains the swamp, I think that means removing things like the EPA. Now, he wants to eliminate that agency altogether, he said. Now, we know he's going to go after Obamacare. We know he's going to go after the trade deals, those things that come in. We know the government itself is 2.8 million employees, and he wants to kind of streamline that and cut that down. So Obamacare, new trade deals, reducing the size of the government, and it begins, he says, with the EPA. How does he do it? Now, I know at one point, Sarah Palin said that she would love to be in charge of the EPA, and if she was, she would cut it so much it would be a short-term job. Now, you have the Clean Air Act and you have the Clean Water Act, which will give some legal support to the EPA and what they do, so that's going to be interesting. President Trump says he wants to cut the Department of Education. Well, that was put into place in 1979 in the Carter administration. And basically to cut the Department of Education, what he wants to do, he's going to go after Common Core, which I think he will get a lot of support for. And he wants to give, I believe it was $30 billion to the states and let the states offer more school choices. And he says, who really knows more what the kids need than their parents? So give the parents more school choices, and here's the funds to the states to let that happen. So that would be interesting if he cuts out the Department of Education. Also, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, he says he wants to cut that. So when you look at 2.8 million employees, these are places that he wants to cut to pay for some of the things that he wants to do. Now, the FDA, again, he's going to run into some problems with the Food Safety Act of 2011. That just gave that agency some more legal standfoot. And there are some Republicans that agree with some things the FDA is doing. So we'll see what happens, how that all kind of comes together. And then he talked about going after cyber terrorism. Well, obviously that's going to be interesting, especially how it happens on the world scale. Russia it's been interesting in just 1 week to watch how Russia has responded to this. If Hillary were the one, she wanted to impose a no-fly zone into Syria. And Russia says if she would have done that, it would have been war. Now, Trump has that same stance, and so Russia seems to be happier with Trump in charge. But the time is coming where Russia's going to ask for America to remove the sanctions that they put on them. I'm not sure Trump would do that, but we'll see how that all plays out as well. I think Dodd-Frank will be something that will be history. I think draining the swamp would mean going after and eliminating Dodd-Frank, which is going with the banks and restrictions on the bank, the big banks, and so on and so forth. If anybody knows Wall Street and the people in Wall Street and how that all works, it's Donald Trump. So that's going to be interesting as well. He obviously wants to increase Border Patrol. He wants to add Border Patrol agents. He wants to increase our military, which from a biblical standpoint is pretty interesting. He wants to, I believe he said he wanted to make the Army he wanted to make sure there's 540,000 enlisted personnel in the Army. He wanted to make sure that the Navy had 350 battleships ready to go. He wanted to make sure that the Air Force had 1,200 fighter jets. So he wants to add the pieces that's been taken away in our military. And I think that's interesting because as we move into end times, America doesn't have the strength military-wise to restrain some of the things that's going to happen. So what I think now is happening, and again, this is a personal opinion, just those are the things I mentioned that Donald Trump says he wants to do, and we can kind of expect his administration to go down that path. And it buys us some time. So I think with this election, and it had to be the hand of God to have Trump be the president. And again, Lindsey did a great job in keeping you up to date in that and giving you a special report on that. But I think God is giving us a breather. If you read the Bible, if you understand the Bible, I would challenge you to go to 2 Kings chapter 22. In 2 Kings 22, you have the story of Josiah. Josiah took the king, became king when he was 8 years old, but when he was 16, they were in the temple. Now Jerusalem, God was angry with Jerusalem. He was angry with Judah, which is the southern part of Israel, because they were into idolatry. They weren't worshiping God properly. They were in the same place that America is right now. They kind of pushed God away and put God on the back burner and worshipped other things and other gods. And God's anger grew against Jerusalem and Judah. And in the temple, they found the Bible. They found the Torah. They actually read Deuteronomy. Now, if you read Deuteronomy, especially towards the end, in chapters 28 to 30, it says, I lay before you life and I lay before you death. I lay before you blessings and I lay before you curses. Then it says, choose life. And basically, if you read the law, how God said to live, the standards that God set, if you lived by those, if you obeyed those, you received the blessings. If you discarded those or were disobedient to the law, the standards that God set, then the curses came. And Israel was at the point when Josiah took over that it was complete corruption, it was complete idolatry, and the blessings were gone and the curses were coming. But then they found the book of Deuteronomy. And as Josiah had this read to him, he said, that's not how we're living. So he sent the priest. He said, go before the Lord and tell me what God says. And the priest comes back and says, God says his anger burns against us. And Josiah just wanted to wipe out all the idolatry. He wanted to clean up Jerusalem. He wanted to restore the temple. He wanted to worship God again. God gave Israel and Jerusalem a breather. And Josiah had reformation on his mind, and he spiritually reformed and revived Jerusalem and Judah. And God's blessing came upon them for a short period of time. After Josiah, there's 4 other kings who come before the nation is taken down. And those 4 kings are evil, and the curses come all the way to the last king, whose name is Zedekiah. So what am I saying now? I'm saying that we have a chance. We have a breather, I hope. I think we're living in the time of Josiah. And here's how I want to end today's video. Donald Trump said during his campaign that he was going to remove the restrictions of the 501c3 with the pastors, with the churches. And basically, what that restriction is, now I'm a pastor, what that restriction is that as a pastor, I cannot endorse candidates. Now, I can preach on topics. I can preach on marriage, I can preach on abortion, I can preach on topics from a biblical standpoint. That's called preaching. But I can't endorse a candidate. Well, Donald Trump says he's going to remove the restrictions, so there's no restrictions from the 501c3. Some pastors don't believe they can preach on marriage. Some don't believe they can preach on abortion from a political standpoint and a biblical standpoint. So when those restrictions are removed, what's the church going to do? Are we going to be Josiahs? Are there going to be men in the pulpit who will stand up and preach the truth? See, we have a breather now. I don't know how long it's going to be, but we have a breather. And God will either respond the way he did to Josiah, and he says the evil is going to come, the judgment's going to come, my anger will come upon you, but you won't live to see it. It will happen after you, or it's going to come during your administration. Where are we at? So I just kind of want you to kind of put all this together and think about this, because if the pastors don't speak up, if the church doesn't come together, then you and I need to, and you and I are the church. The church is not a building, it's the people. So we need to speak up, and we need to speak up for reformation and worship and get rid of idolatry and make God God again. Well, I hope that's encouraging to you. I hope you can kind of think about that, because God's giving us a breather. Now the question is, what are we going to do with it? Hey, that's all the time that I have for today. I would love to hear your thoughts and your comments on this. You can reach me through interpretingthetimes.com. That's all one word if you go online, interpretingthetimes.com. Again, I'm Pastor Dave. It's great to be with you. I look forward to seeing you again next week. God bless y'all.